All right, there you have it. President Obama wrapping up with the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, saying that the United States is a strong partner with Ethiopia, referencing Ethiopia as one of the strongest growing economies in the world. Also pressing security issues, human rights issues. The more Ethiopia grows, the president says, the more the U.S.-Ethiopia relationship becomes mutual. He was also asked about the Iran and the Iran-U.S. nuclear deal, saying that this is a good deal, and reiterating and addressing his critics on that deal. And I wanted to bring in Anthony on that one because you were listening. You were listening there and
he said to find factual arguments. So I'll just bring up three quick facts. Number one, just back from Israel, there's nobody in the Israeli Security Council will say that the 24 days is just too long of a period of time for the inspections. Number two, this will proliferate an arms race in the Middle East that we do not want to have. And the last big thing, which I'm super concerned about, is that the sanctions were actually working and it was crippling their economy. And once you unleash all of this oil, there'll be hundreds of billions of dollars that come into that Iranian Islamic regime that is sponsoring terrorism all across the world, but specifically in Iraq, which is going to be a major destabilization of the region. So he's not addressing any of those things. He has to be held accountable for that.
So politically, he made a lot of news out of this conference as well. We heard him basically attacking the Republican Party, referencing the attacks by Donald Trump on John McCain.
This arises out of a culture of attacks that have become far too common. And if you're going to take my job, if I'm going to hand the keys to you in a year and a half, you need to show some, you be serious and show some decorum. I'm paraphrasing, but he didn't endorse Hillary Clinton, did he?
No, he did. He stopped short at that. Some will say, Michael Mukasey, I want to bring you in on this. You are a former U.S. Attorney General. We were listening here, and Dagen made the comment, well, he stopped short of endorsing Hillary Clinton. But you were referencing, well, Joe Biden still has yet to throw his hat into the ring. But listen, some of these comments coming out of Ethiopia, the president saying in response to the nuke deal, if you're asking me about the politics of Washington and the rhetoric, that doesn't always go great. He said comments of Mr. Huckabee, referencing Huckabee's recent comments, part of a general pattern, would be ridiculous if you weren't so sad. Maybe this is a push effort.
Talk about rhetoric.
There's a lot of rhetoric coming out of the speech today. What do you make of all the president's comments here?
Well, I think that it's an easy shot to get up and say that you haven't heard any factual arguments when there's nobody sitting on the other side of the table to make them, as Anthony just did, as anybody else could. The fact is that Iran is going to still have its nuclear equipment. It's still going to have its nuclear program. It's still going to have its site at Arak. All of these things are sacred and sacrosanct and protected. We're not going to have access to military sites, and Iran is going to decide what's a reasonable inquiry and what's not a reasonable inquiry. And there's going to be a period of back and forth before we ever get to inspect. The notion that somehow the sanctions are going to snap back is ridiculous, because even among our allies, it took months, sometimes years, to get sanctions in place in the first place. And once they get taken off, there's no way they can, quote, snap back.
Okay, and lastly, a quote from the president coming out of Ethiopia, specifically this riff he seemed to go on against Republicans when he was referencing Governor Huckabee's most recent comments, criticizing the Iran nuclear deal, saying that this is part of just a general pattern we've seen that would be considered ridiculous if it weren't so sad. All right, there's obviously going to be more on this.